And the best features typically will solve a problem. I mean, some features are kind of just nice to have things that make the product more exciting, but a lot, really, if you've got a big list of features that you're adding, an awful lot of them better be solving some sort of problem. Otherwise, chances are you might not need them there. Another type of research is role play. And what this basically means is kind of get out there and do what people would do who are going to be using your future product, or maybe are using a current equivalent or so on. Again, to take a banking application example, go into a bank, pretend you want to get information about a mortgage. Interact with the people in the bank, find out how they give information, what kind of information is missing, and then maybe go do the same thing online, and then maybe do the same thing on the phone. Put yourself in the shoes of whoever your consumer is going to be, and try to figure out what their problems are right now with the current way that they're doing it. And there's quite a bit you can do with role play, actually. And again, it's inexpensive. It just takes time, really. Self-reporting is kind of an interesting one. I mean, the idea with self-reporting is that there's certain things you want to find out about that happen over time. And so simply saying to somebody, how do you do your grocery shopping might not really help as much as actually finding out sequentially how they do things. So the idea is you find people who are willing to, for a short period of time, send you little bits of information on a regular basis. And so you can ask them to keep a journal. The really convenient thing with mobile phones is one of the easiest ways is ask them to send you SMSs. So every time they go to Tesco, tell them to send you a text and say, I went to Tesco today. And if you're trying to find out frequency of shopping habits, for example, stuff like that. Another really handy one is to ask them to take a photo. Again, with mobile phones, this is now so much easier than it would have been in the past. They can take a photo and just send it off probably fairly easily. Again, take photos of things that relate to when they do certain things that are important to your product. So again, accounting example, maybe every time the accountant sits down to do the accounts, take a picture of the desk so you can see what's there. Is there an old-fashioned calculator? Is there just a computer? What is there? What's being used? And so when you're done, you want to share the research. And this is really important. That some companies will do months and months of research, and then it just sits there kind of on a computer somewhere and nobody looks at it. One of the most common ways to share, and one of the most useful ways, is to create personas. And again, another quote, the general idea with personas is that you can't please everybody. And if you're going to try, you're probably going to fail. You'll have this product with too many features that nobody really cares about. And so you want to try to zero in on who are you trying to please, who are the people who will really want your product, and then how do you tailor it to them. And so what personas are, I mean, ideally what you do is you've done all your research, and during all this time you've met all sorts of people. And after a while you can tell that a lot of people are similar. You'll start to see, oh, well, this person was kind of like that lady that I met that one day, and this lady had the same problem as that one. And you start to group them into basically kind of archetypes of who is going to be the person that your product is absolutely for. So, this was some research that we did, or some personas that we developed for Philips for a music product. And the general idea was, the guy at the bottom, he was the absolute person that this product was for. All the features were going to be aimed at his behavior when it came to music. And, we had studied the different behaviors of different people. So that's the primary persona, the person you absolutely have to please. And then we had a second person who was someone that we thought probably really enjoyed the product as well for a variety of reasons, but they weren't kind of the main person. And then we had a third bunch, which were, okay, these are kind of the edge cases, but they're close enough, they use music products a lot, and we think we can help them too. And if we do, then our product will truly be really different from everybody else's music products. And so that's the idea with personas, is to, 2 or 3, maybe 4 people that are kind of your people that you're going to remember throughout the whole kind of product journey of this is who this product is for. And if you kind of, as you're developing features and throwing them in, if you get off track and all of a sudden you realize you have too many, you can go back and say, okay, well, hold on, are any of these features for these people here? Because we did research, we understood kind of what things people are missing. Does our product fit with these? And so it's really handy to have these. And adding pictures is really, really helpful too, because it kind of helps make them more concrete. And you remember the people better, and you kind of start referring to them by their name. And so visuals are really, really helpful in anything that you do to share research with people. The more visuals you have, the better. And which brings us to the next point, which is about sketching. another visual thing you can do when you're developing a product. So the worst thing you can do when you're developing a product is for everyone to have their own little ideas kind of in a vacuum and then occasionally share them, which happens a lot. If you start sketching your ideas and putting them on paper, and then you can put the paper on the wall, and all of a sudden your ideas start to get out there. And the other neat thing about sketching, well, first of all, it's free, you know, there's no purchase orders, there's no organizing things really. At any point in time, you can start putting stuff down on paper. And again, the key with paper is that then people can see it, you can pass it around, people can make notes on it. If it's on the computer, no one will see it. You send it in a PowerPoint, half the people won't read it. This is kind of a way to kind of start getting your ideas out there and iterate them. And absolutely anybody can do it. And again, this is often what happens. You've got everybody's individually working on something and nobody's talking. Getting developers and engineers to start sketching is sometimes a bit challenging. But actually, you know, most people, when the ideas start flowing, they don't mind writing it down. And you know, there's no skills at all. I mean, it can be anything from little notes, it can be little scribbles, it can be anything you need it to be, really. But the idea is to start getting your ideas out, start iterating them, you know, discussing what is this product going to be like. And sketching the user interface is definitely good. A lot of people gravitate towards that. They start drawing the UI right away. Oh, it's going to have a button here and this other thing there. That is okay, but what's even better is to start sketching the story, right? So again, you've done your research, you know who you're making this for. So how are they going to use it? Okay, well, you know, he starts over here and he's got this problem, and then he starts doing something else, and oh, your product is now useful because he's doing this, and you know, what is he doing? Why is he doing it? Where does the problem get solved, or how does the product help the person? And you know, this is an example from a workshop in London with Symbian, where we had engineers come from, anyone who was licensing Symbian basically, came, which is not many people now, which is why there's not going to be another workshop. But so they all came and we brainstormed about future product development. And so you see the sketches are just really simple, but the general idea is that, you know, you were answering questions. Okay, so how are we doing this? Why? How? You know, you make mistakes, okay, you cover it up, it really doesn't matter. But all of a sudden you've got this visual thing that you can share with a whole bunch of people, and it starts to talk about the product. And sure, there's little ideas about how the user interface might look, but at this point, it's, you know, it's too early, you don't really know what you're building yet, so don't worry about the UI. Just get your ideas out there. And so, you know, drawing it is great, but then trying it out is a million times better. Which gets us to prototyping, and specifically rapid prototyping, in the sense that, I mean, one of the things that we've encountered a lot is companies will build a prototype, and it'll be this big, expensive, complicated prototype that it took some poor developer a month to build, and it'll epitomize the product, and then within seconds it's out of date, right? Because it's taken so long to build, and it's so complicated, and then of course roadmaps change and you're working on the product. But because it's this thing built with code and it took all this time, then, you know, you either have to get another developer to fix it, or it just sits there, which is usually what happens. You end up with prototypes that are immediately out of date, never get used, and they kind of epitomize whatever the product was 3 months ago. So the idea is to be able to prototype really quickly. And again, why? I mean, you know, to me, this is so true with code the same way it is with architecture and everything else. You know, solve your problems before you write the complicated code, or you pour the concrete, or you do whatever. Don't solve your problems, at least not all of them, as you're doing the expensive stuff, basically. Or you're just going to have to rewrite it. So, so, you know, why are prototypes good? Because people can interact with them, and you interact with things, you understand things. And it's amazing, actually, on mobile. The act of getting something on a phone, you will notice a million things that you never noticed 5 minutes ago. It's just uncanny. And it's more interesting than documents, and this is the other problem often with companies. You know, they've got this big process, everybody does wireframes, you end up with huge stacks of wireframes, nobody reads them, they're out of date, they're just as out of date as the prototype was, and that actually is a huge problem, out of date wireframes. I mean, because then they'll be handed to the developer and he'll start building from them, which is horrible. So, again, lots of prototypes is better than lots of wireframes. Prototypes are kind of a living spec. You can do more with them, and ideally, if you can iterate them too, then you can actually, you know, you can experiment, solve little problems, and start kind of building an idea of what your product is like before you kind of dive in and start building it. And again, it helps you, I mean, these are all kind of repetitive themes, but again, you can discover behavior and you can model tasks. As soon as you have a small prototype, you can start pretending to use it and you start discovering again whether it works and whether it doesn't. And the idea is to start really simple, invest very little, and then you want to fail early, obviously, before you've invested a lot. So any type of really simple prototyping will help. And it doesn't mean that at some point you might not build still a really big prototype, but the idea is that you build different kinds of prototypes for different things. So if you're testing just the design, well, don't build this huge code prototype to test design. And if you're just testing the interaction, do something really quick to test the interaction, but again, test the right thing with the right type of prototype. So a couple ways to rapidly prototype. Paper. Paper's, paper isn't perfect, but it's actually pretty good. And certainly with touch, it's a lot easier doing paper prototypes with touch than it used to be when you were trying to do, well, little indirect manipulation devices or things with a mouse. I mean, at least with touch now, you can actually take your finger and point just the way the person will, and you can actually prototype quite a bit. And role play, again, so role play is good for research, but it's actually also good for prototyping. I mean, sometimes what you're prototyping is more kind of an idea. I'm trying to think of a good example. We had a project once where we were talking about mapping and helping people arrange evenings out with friends using maps. So, 5 friends, one lives in the north of Edinburgh, one lives in the south, one lives in Glasgow, and they all want to go to the cinema on Friday. And how do you arrange that? Using your phone, and could some sort of mapping software help with that? And everyone had all these ideas, and it was like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and it's going to be wonderful, and everyone's going to be able to Uber organize their evening out using our software. And so we started role-playing it, and it was like, okay, you be the guy from here, I'm the guy from Glasgow. And the more we started talking about it and pretending that we were these people, the more we realized that they didn't need a piece of software. All they needed was maybe to get on the phone or send a text message or something, and they actually didn't need all this stuff. They kind of had already what they needed. But then we also realized that maybe there were some tiny problems that we could solve that had to do with organizing people, rather than trying to solve the big giant one, which actually you could solve just by talking to your friends and picking up the phone and stuff like that. So what's neat about role play is it often helps to uncover really unexpected stuff, stuff that maybe in a meeting sounds perfectly logical, but then you start role playing it. It makes no sense at all. Or maybe you discover something new.